Welcome to the Data Literacy Show, the podcast that helps organizations build, measure, and level up their data and AI literacy. I'm Alli Torban, the Senior Data Literacy Advocate here at Data Literacy.
All right. Hi, Alli. Hi, everyone. I'm Ben Jones, co-founder and CEO of Data Literacy. We're all about helping people learn the language of data and AI. We do that through tailored training, through assessments, through podcasts like this.
So, on today's show, we're going to share a structured way to help you identify opportunities to automate parts of your workflow with AI.
Right. So, everyone has been talking about AI agents all year long. It's a little nauseating, right?
Yeah,
There's
a lot.
also a lot of conversation about people failing with AI agents. So I think that companies are making some common mistakes, and we want to talk about that because here's the thing, not every task can or should be automated. And what I want to cover in this episode is walking through maybe a simple structured way to figure out which parts of your workflow are best suited for automation with AI agents and how to make sure they stay reliable and high quality once you do go ahead and automate them.
hmm Yeah, and we do hear a lot. Hey, if you're going to use an AI agent, use it on automating those repetitive tasks that you're
Right.
doing quite often. But
Right.
that can mean a lot of different things, and
Yeah.
it can kind of be hard to figure out. Okay, is this actually a good opportunity for me to automate? So, what
Yeah.
do you think is a way we can actually know when it's the right time to
The right
bring
time.
AI automation into our workflow?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? So, of course, like just upfront, what is an agent? Well, it's essentially automating part of a process. And so it's an AI tool that we use to kind of take over parts of a process, to carry out steps, potentially also make decisions and make changes to the world based on some inputs and outputs. And so, we're seeing them all over the place now. But again, they're failing spectacularly in many cases because I think a big problem is that people aren't thinking about the entire workflow or process. So there are parts of a given process that are probably okay and even maybe really good to automate, but there are other parts of the process that you really have to leave with humans. And so, how do we know, right? So, how do we evaluate the workflow? How do you know if it's ready for automation with AI agents? You got to start by mapping out the steps of your process. Maybe even literally map it out, on paper, on a whiteboard, write it out. What are the steps? So, let's kind of go through an example in this episode so it isn't just abstract and theoretical, but we can maybe put it into practice. But why don't we, let's say, think about part of a process in a sales rep's life. So why don't you kind of walk us through what that might look like?
Yeah. Let's walk through what the steps might be if we are part of a sales rep team. So let's say your sales reps are always creating these customized pitch decks to
Yep.
their potential clients, and that's
Mhm.
part of the sales pipeline. So some of the steps might be first, the lead enters your pipeline somehow. They fill out the contact form. Somehow they're entering your pipeline, right? So that's first. Then the rep does some sort of background research on the company or person. Then they have a sales call. And then the rep creates, let's say, a magic presentation that's going to convince them to buy whatever product that you're selling. And then the last step would be you send it off in a thoughtful email. Hopefully that's going to be landing the sale for you, at least moving it down the field, so to speak. That is a pretty simple process map. If I'm thinking about, hey, here's a process of my sales department goes through, and there are a lot of other details before and after these steps, but that I think that would be a really good place to start. Just, hey, here's kind of the happy path of where a customer moves through our sales pipeline.
Yeah, and I think every company can relate to that. They have sales reps figuring out how to move leads through the pipeline.
hmm
And, it's a really common process. So probably a good one to think about. So the question is then, what, if anything, should the company automate about this process? I mean, are there some steps where automation would be really helpful? If so, would it be safe to delegate those steps to an AI agent or not? So, one place to start, a framework that I think might be helpful is what we call the frequency complexity matrix.
Yes, we all we geeks love matrices, don't we?
Gotta love it. You gotta love it. It's like consultant
We have to
101.
have
Come up
them.
with a matrix, come up with a four blocker. And that's what this is. It's a four blocker. It's a grid.
Hmm.
Okay, let's think about this grid. Well, what do we have on the x-axis? Frequency. How often does this process take place? Or this process step?
Hmm.
Maybe it's not the whole process. We're just going to apply the frequency complexity matrix to each step in the process that you just outlined for us, Allie. So again, x-axis, frequency. How often does it happen? On the left, you have low frequency. Maybe it's, I don't know, once a month. As you go to the right, the frequency goes up and up and up. So this could be, I don't know, multiple times a day, maybe. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What about the y-axis? That's where we talk about complexity. So low is low complexity, high on the y-axis, high complexity. Let's imagine four quadrants then in this grid. And what do we have in the lower right? So the lower right, that means it's to the right, so it's high frequency, and it's down low, so it's low complexity. Think of that as your low hanging fruit for automation. So what are you seeing here? Well, there's like data entry, some routine reporting, maybe some standard kinds of boilerplate communications. So let's apply that to our custom sales deck example. Okay, well, maybe there's a part of that, let's say the information gathering or the research step, you know, where
Hmm.
the sales rep is saying, hey, what's this lead all about? Well, maybe let's say what they're finding themselves doing is combing the same websites all day long to like gather the latest financial reports for the companies in their pipeline. So maybe it's like, you know, Yahoo Finance and I don't know, like a handful of these financial sites where you can just go get like their revenue and their employees and
Right.
their
Going to
all that. Yeah.
LinkedIn, seeing their profile,
All that,
information
right.
about the person who contacted you.
Right. What's their
Hmm.
title? All those
Hmm.
things. So it's really basic stuff. So it's, but they're again, they're always doing it. They're finding it really mindless and boring, and it's just not that hard. So, and the complexity is low because it's just a question of like going and retrieving, you know, a piece of information that's that.
Organizing it on a piece of paper,
Yeah,
a document.
that's right. And the information's out there. So this isn't that hard. It's not rocket science. They just got to go get it. So that would be a good example, right? So again, you know, maybe that's a good one to automate. Maybe also, let's say they have their call, right? So they talk to the rep, they talk to the lead, they have a conversation. What's the process? How do they capture their notes? So maybe they've been spending all this time typing up their notes into some system. Again, a great process step to think about automating. Maybe you can use some AI agents to automatically capture notes, to automatically summarize conversations, and things like that. Okay, so we want to eliminate the no fun part of the typing. That's a great step to automate. So that's again, I would call that maybe a no-brainer potentially for there are other things to consider we'll get to, but those are really good starting points. There's a good chance they're going to be useful and helpful to automate with an AI agent. But it might not be that much of a game changer. It'll make maybe some small little improvement, but it won't really make a big difference. It won't
Hmm.
really kind of unlock some competitive advantage necessarily. It'll just save them a little bit of time. So I think the more power comes in when you talk about high frequency, but moderate complexity. So it's maybe in the middle of the x-axis.
Hmm.
So straddling the left and right side of this grid we've been talking about, these quadrants. So we're still on the right side. Again, it's happening a lot, but now we've increased complexity. So what are we talking about here? You know, tasks where we've got a lot of steps. Maybe there's decision points you have to integrate with this different systems.
Hmm.
So I think in our example of the sales rep, this would be kind of like creating the slide deck itself. So what does it have to do? Well, we have to take different inputs like those financials we researched, maybe other research findings, maybe notes from the sales meeting. You need to match that up with a data set of all the company's products and the features of those products and their benefits, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
And out spits this amazing kind of dialed in deck. Okay. And it could be a huge win if you could pull off automating that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it feels like there are some predictable tasks in there, but there is a little bit more nuance that you didn't have before with just kind of collecting some basic stats about the company.
Right. And maybe some aspects of it aren't so obvious. Like, let's say, for example, the personality profile of the person that the sales rep has to talk to, that might not be something to automate because it kind of gets into some really intuitive
Hmm.
components of the relationship, you know?
Yeah, like the five senses, you got to like see someone's body language and hear some intonation and just your experience of dealing with other people.
And that could be make or break, which is
Yeah.
why a sales rep is a great one, is such a valuable thing for a company to have. Really hard to automate that, you know? We're talking about high complexity because it's the person, what they care about, how they interact, their style, all of that. And so you want your human sales rep to be kind of gathering that information. Maybe you could help them capture it a little bit in notes, but at the same time, they're a big part of that process, right?
Hmm.
So there's all kinds of different nuance in it, for sure. You bring up a good point. Um, so what you want to do is apply those AI agents wherever you see patterns, but there's some flexibility, and we've got some clear inputs. We've got some really clear decision trees, this or that, yes or no. There's lots of ways to track and measure the criteria, the quality of the output, and to know if you're successful or not.
Hmm.
So these are kind of ways to think through this overall process, maybe how you can think about steps in the process that might be good candidates for automation, others that let's not go there. Another question actually before we move on to some other important components of this framework we're developing is that you have to think about the underlying data. I think a lot of people in the data world are pointing this out. That data quality is a huge part of the AI agent empowerment. And what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, with our sales rep, all right, maybe you don't have a good, robust data set of all your company's products, features, benefits, maybe testimonials about it, and all that. Let's just say that doesn't exist. Or maybe it exists, but it's kind of really spotty,
Hmm. Or
maybe.
out of date.
Out of date.
That stuff happens,
Exactly.
changes quick.
Right. Maybe you launch new products. Maybe,
Hmm.
they're
Pricing changes.
right. Goodness knows things are changing with pricing, with
Hmm.
inflation and such. So would you want to automate that if the data is really dirty or incomplete or out of date? Probably not. It might be tricky to automate. It might not be very reliable. So that's the thing to think about as well. Let's say, for example, the notes, right? Maybe they just don't have a good process of entering the notes into the CRM, or you
Mm.
haven't automated that part yet. So now, are you going to create a sales deck when the AI agent doesn't even really have access to the notes themselves? Maybe there's no way to connect it like that. So these are things to think about. The quality of the underlying data can be a huge make or break for that process.
Yeah, I
And
could see how you might need to go back and train your sales reps on how to take notes better in a way that's going to help your AI agent more. Like
mhm,
before, it could have been they could take notes however they want, however it makes it easiest for them to create the presentation later. But if you
right.
have this process in place, you're kind of changing this process, bringing in an AI agent in. Now it might be necessary for you to train your sales reps in inputting their notes in a particular way so that the AI agent can use them as efficiently and usefully as possible.
Exactly. And maybe it's not all or nothing. It's a multiple step process. For example, maybe you roll out an automation tool for them to collect notes. Like maybe this tool like Otter AI, it automatically transcribes all the meetings, all the text, the audio from a meeting. And it transcribes that into text or translates it or summarizes it or whatever. So once that is done and that information is captured and put into a data set somewhere, maybe into a CRM system somewhere, and that's been going on for some amount of time to build up the volume of that notes-based data, then down the road, you start to experiment more with the slide deck creation process that now has access to a much richer notes data set
Mm.
thanks to an earlier step of the automation, right? So it's kind of like some steps in automation are going to help unlock other steps in the automation, but maybe not until later down the road. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Yeah, yeah, you got to slowly build up to it. Make sure the data that you are using and creating is clean and it's going to help you down the line in that workflow. But you also have to define that workflow first, right? That's
You
kind of the
do.
baby step that
Yeah,
I think that people forget to do. That baby step, get the step, understand the steps first,
right.
try it on some of these tasks, and then you'll be able to see, okay, we need to tweak this, we need to train a little bit. But I think that brings up a really important question is what if there is something that is a little bit too risky or too messy to automate? Like, how do we
Yeah,
think through that?
yeah. I mean, how good is it and how risky is it? These are the next
Yeah.
two questions to ask. So the first one is about how good is it? No, so one way to think about that is some kind of an exception rate. So, okay, you turn on some AI agent, but you don't turn it on in production. You just do a prototype. Let's say you prototype having an AI tool create the sales deck that's customized to a specific opportunity. And it's just something you've been prototyping. And now all of a sudden you have some outputs to evaluate. So here's a question to think about. Well, what's the exception rate? Or, what's the percentage of the time where a human's got to intervene? Maybe they need to get this sales deck and fix something in it. Maybe it's a problem. Maybe it's missing some information. Maybe it's just not good enough, you know? So what's that percentage? Is it rare that someone needs to go in and tweak it, or is it pretty much all the time? So if you've got a relatively small percentage of cases where someone needs to step in and adjust, you might be kind of looking at a good automation candidate there. On the other hand, right, if the exception rate starts to climb a lot, 10, 20, 30%, well, then you might want to consider some kind of a hybrid approach where, the AI is doing part of the stuff, routine aspects of the process, and then the human is stepping in and doing others, sort of like draft and then final draft, right? So the AI creates the draft, the human goes in and finalizes it, and that's part of the process every single time. So these are things to think about when we talk about, how good is it, right? And we're only going to know it when we prototype it.
So would you think that if, let's say we have an AI agent make the sales deck, if someone is having to go in there and change things around 1 out of 10 times, does
Yeah.
that feels like okay, yeah, this feels like it's a pretty low exception rate. Let's keep automating this.
Yeah. I mean, if 9 out of 10 times everything is golden, that's pretty good. I mean, a question to think about though is that one time out of 10
Mm.
that it's not good.
Hmm.
What's in what way is it not good? In other words, is it just something it makes it not great but
Oh, like a
good?
typo or the color was a
Yeah.
little bit off. Yeah.
Right, versus something like you just gave sensitive information
Right.
to a customer. Okay, well, then it's like a catastrophic failure. I think what we're getting to here is like the recovery, the next element of our framework.
Mm.
You're feeding right into that, which is kind of the cost of failure. Another way to think of it is what we call the recovery cost. So, what does this mean? Okay, what is the cost if it goes wrong? Because things will go wrong, but if it does, how do we figure out how bad is it? So let's say we just put on a simple scale from 1 to 10. So up there at the top 10, we have a real high stakes process, something like automating a medical record update or some kind of actual financial transaction.
Yeah. We
You
want
know,
that to be right all the time.
yeah, if
Thank
you
you.
make a mistake there, it might literally be costly or you could get sued. Okay,
Yeah.
so in our sales example, maybe you're talking about like some of those clients in the opportunity, some of the opportunities are really, really high dollar value opportunities. So, this is a big deal. This could really make or break the sales goal for the quarter. This single opportunity, that's a really high stake process. If you were to send them a slide deck that it's a flop, or worse, was like giving out information that you have no business giving out. Okay, so that's a 10. But a 1 on this recovery cost scale is something that would be pretty low risk, like, some kind of a summary email, let's say, or something internally, internal only, maybe. Really easy to correct, no big deal if it's not perfect. And in our case, maybe if you're talking about a very small lead where the potential revenue is very, very low, in other words, it would not make any difference at all, almost like a rounding error, in the overall sales goal, then maybe that's not so bad if you end up sending out a slide deck that isn't great. Again, you have to watch out for things where you're going to be in the headlines, like it sends out a slide deck, again, with private information in it, or
Hmm.
it sends out a slide deck that it says something that's really, I don't know, like inappropriate, right? So,
Hmm.
because those kinds of things do happen. So, in any case, yeah, I mean, as long as you don't have some kind of really, you know, terrible situation, then you just want to think about it in terms of how bad would it be if it goes wrong. The higher the recovery cost, well, you have to put in a lot of monitoring and safeguards, the human in the loop, that's where that comes in. The lower it is on this scale, maybe you can experiment. So maybe you automate the sales deck creation process for those small leads, less than some certain dollar amount, maybe $1,000. You're going with a much more human controlled version of the process for those big fish in the pipeline.
Hmm. Yeah. So in this process, we identify some tasks. Well, we identify the workflow first, the tasks in the workflow, then
Hmm.
think about high frequency, medium complexity. That would probably be a
Hmm.
good sweet spot. That also have maybe less than 20% exception rate. So you're not having to jump in there all the time.
Right?
And then you also have to assess the recovery cost of each one from a scale from 1 to 10. So,
Yep.
yeah, if a person is having to jump in 1 out of 10 times just to color correct some of the colors because it doesn't perfectly align with branding. Yeah, maybe that's not really that big of a deal. Or like you said, like one out of every 10 times it reveals some sensitive private financial information. Okay,
Right.
that is really not good.
Can't
We
do
need to
it
be, yeah, we have to make sure human in the loop on that one.
for
So if
sure.
we start with the tasks that have lower recovery costs, then we
Hmm.
can start kind of small and safe.
Yeah, I think those are the things to consider, and then you scale up once people build an agent and the system and it implements it and people start to get more confident and they start to feel more comfortable with what's going on. And then your automation is actually working. And I think that these are the questions people aren't asking as much as they should. They're not thinking about it in terms of a process, and they aren't looking at the process steps and thinking about all these aspects and really being strategic and clear-headed about what they're automating and why. And that entire picture is really important to paint, right?
Hmm.
And I think that's how you go about and do it. And then okay, then you're going to go for it, right? So that's it, right? It's all good.
Yeah, bye. Everything is fine. We
Yeah.
did the workflow.
We did
No.
it.
Once you implement it, I'm sure you're going to be tweaking and assessing whether this is actually helping you, right?
Yeah, you have to think about the health of the process that's being automated. And so how do you measure that? How do you monitor those metrics just like you'd monitor any process? So of course, you've got different types of metrics just like in anything. I mean, there's a metric that would be related to the efficiency, speed, volume, or costs. You've got some quality metrics around error rates or accuracies. You've got some reliability metrics that relate to, like the uptime or the failure or recovery time of the system itself, the agent itself. You maybe even have some satisfaction metrics that are gathering the perspectives of your employees that are a part of the process, the stakeholders downstream. How is it impacting real people, that are relying on it? And these are all things I think you need to put in place. And even if your hands free, and no one's touching it before it goes out the door, you still need to be looking at that on some frequency, maybe weekly, maybe monthly. You need to be saying, hey, is everything going to plan here? Are things drifting in a way that we don't like? And so you kind of keep your finger on the pulse of all of that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're getting feedback from your sales reps that this process is really bothering them for some reason, maybe it's tedious in some particular way, or maybe the people who are receiving these presentations feel like there's something really off, or they feel like they're deleting them because they feel like they're
Hmm.
spam, like they look like
Yeah.
spam. Something is happening. You really want to catch that quickly and
Yeah.
fix it
Yeah.
because this AI automation is supposed to be helping you, not making it worse.
Right, exactly. You want to catch it before it becomes too costly or disruptive, right?
Hmm.
You got to know what healthy looks like.
Yeah, yeah. And I've also heard you talk a lot, Ben, about how AI automation should be focused on rebalancing the
Yeah.
workload, not just completely taking the human out.
Yeah.
Can you tell
Yeah.
us a bit about why keeping humans in the loop is really important?
Yeah. So again, I mean, for the very practical reason that even if you've got an automated process, you need humans that are monitoring it. Human in the loop, of course, HITL is the phrase and the acronym that go along with this mindset that, you're not micromanaging the AI agent. You're just continually keeping in touch with how it's going. And, humans need to be involved with that, right? So that's a big reason why you want to keep humans in the process. It's really about freeing them from the mundane as opposed to replacing them. It should give them time and space and energy to do other things for you and your organization that are higher value. Of course, every organization needs to figure out their payroll and their personnel and all of those things, and a million things factor into that. But I think in general, if a company is going in saying, okay, great, we're going to use these agents and let all these people go, and that's how you start, that's really the wrong way to think about it. I think it's going to backfire on a lot of companies. They're going to be wishing they had those people back because no one's there to figure out how well things are going. And, you're not moving forward. You're just, in some ways, speeding things up. But we really need humans to be thinking big about where are we going? How are we expanding strategic things, human elements that need to be incorporated? And to me, I mean, that just can't be, those things are not automatable. So
Yeah,
that's what you
yeah.
got to keep humans in the loop here.
Yeah, it's not speeding up isn't good if you're speeding up towards the ground.
Yeah, right. Yeah, let's go over the edge like a lemming, you know? I
Yeah.
mean, you don't want
Lemmings.
to
I
do
remember
that.
that game. Do you remember that computer game with lemmings?
Oh yeah, just
Don't
going
be a
right off the
lemming.
cliff. Don't be a, you don't want to be an AI lemming.
Don't be an AI lemming. I think that's a good place to stop. Okay, let's recap what
Yep.
we covered.
Okay.
So let's say you're deciding what to automate with AI. You're running a company, you're in charge of, let's say, your sales department, and you're like, okay, let's use AI, let's optimize some. So first, you're going to define what the workflow looks like. What are the tasks in the workflow? Very
Hmm.
basic, easy thing to start with, super important. Then you're going to use the frequency complexity matrix and identify some good candidates that are in the high frequency, medium complexity range. Those are really good opportunities to use AI in a very useful way. Because of course you can use high frequency, low complexity. That's pretty obvious. But you can think about actually you get a lot more use out of it if you start to
Yeah, I
creep up into that medium complexity range.
think so.
Super important though, check the exception rate. Something under 20% is ideal for the full automation, but in addition to assessing the recovery costs, because you have to
Hmm.
understand the level of acceptable risk for that particular task.
Yep.
And then you got to make sure you're tracking your health metrics for your automation, efficiency, quality, reliability, satisfaction of everybody who's using it and receiving the outputs too. And then, of course, keep the human in the loop to keep the trust in the process and adapt over time.
Bingo. And also then think about for the people that have time freed up because of this automation you just put into place. The question people aren't asking is, how do we really get the most out of that additional time they have?
Hmm.
What else could we do and provide for them? What other opportunities can they become a part of, and other ways they can contribute now that they have that additional bandwidth? So there you go. I mean, and also then, thinking about it from the point of view of not just grabbing a low-hanging fruit. I think if you really want to get more out of AI agents, you got to pick those tasks that are high frequency, medium complexity, and then, again, like you said, exception rate, recovery costs, track those metrics, keep humans in the loop, give people even more opportunities to do greater things for you and your organization.
Yes, great. Well, I hope you guys found this episode helpful. Thanks for joining us, of course, on the Data Literacy Show. Feel free to share this episode with a colleague if you think they're thinking about using an AI agent or automation at work too.
Exactly, yeah. And hey, don't forget to subscribe. You won't miss an episode. We've been doing this every month now. This is 11 straight.
Yep.
We're going to wrap up a full year of our first season
Yep.
of the Data Literacy Show next month. So we've been excited about it. And everything you'll see here on the show today, including the nice graphics that go along with it, you'll find those in the show notes on dataliteracy.com. Last thing to plug is a lot of this is baked into a course we are about to release called Enhancing Your Workflow with AI. So this is a course that walks you through a lot of this kind of in more structured lessons with case studies and all of that. So look out for that. You'll see it real soon, Enhancing Your Workflow with AI. We've got other practical AI courses coming down the road in 2026 and beyond. So with that, we'll sign off.
Yeah. Yeah. And go to the show notes and you can get on the wait list so you'll know immediately when that course
Oh,
comes out
right.
too. Yep.
That's right. We do have a wait list for now. Exactly.
Yep.
Yep. Check
Yep.
that
And
out.
you'll
Okay,
know
everyone.
immediately.
Yeah, that's right. You'll get the email. You'll know before. You'll know before what we post about it. How about that? You'll be the
Yes,
first to
that's
know.
great.
Okay, everyone. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye now.
All right. Bye.